Today on CityCast Austin, in case you didn't know, Austinites will be electing a mayor in November. So, with early voting just a few weeks away, we're kicking off our interview series with each of Austin's 5 mayoral candidates in alphabetical order. First up is Jeffery Bowen, who entered the race just hours before the deadline. He owns a small construction company and he sued the city over Code Next. He also serves on the Austin Neighborhood Council. So, who is he and why does he want to be your next mayor? CityCast Austin is brought to you by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tecovas. It's Monday, September 23rd. I'm Nikki Devon, and this is what Austin's talking about. Hello, we are here today with Jeffery Bowen, mayoral candidate for Austin, Texas. Hi, Jeffery. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you this morning, Nikki?
I'm great. Thank you for sitting down and talking to me. So we're going to get right into it because I saw your name and I got really excited because you're someone that I don't know a lot about. And I always like it when a new person slides into things, slides into the race. So tell us who you are and why you're running for mayor.
Well, again, my name is Jeffery Bowen. We have been residents of Austin for 35 years. Originally, I was raised here in Texas. I was in the United States Air Force and was able to be transferred to Bergstrom when it was an Air Force base to come down and teach leadership and management, middle and upper management for the Air Force. And that's how we ended up coming back home. We were stationed in Utah at the time, but we'd been, and honestly, I've been all over the world. So I've only lacked 2 continents from touching all of them. But so we've been here 35 years, didn't think we were going to be here that long. Our 2 kids went to school, graduated from here. But so my kids no longer live here. They couldn't afford to stay here in Austin anymore. I'm active in Austin Neighborhoods Council. I'm right now currently a vice president with the Austin Neighborhoods Council, was also a sector rep for 5 years. I own my own small business. I do a lot of construction management services or small projects. So I've been in that world for roughly about 40 years at different levels. My wife also has her own small business. And I got into this race because I just kind of got fed up because of being involved in the local city council and different issues, whether it be Home One, whether it be Code Next, whether it just be speaking at council. I just got fed up of not being listened to and tired of just dealing with it. So I said, you're either part of the solution or part of the problem. So I jumped in the very last day at 3:00 in the afternoon. And everything since has been, here we go.
So what makes you qualified to be mayor of Austin?
Well, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, any other candidate at some point in time, what were their qualifications? I just feel like I got 68 years of life experiences, been having managed different people, managed different, I worked for one of the largest nonprofit organizations in the world. So the city really, for all practical purposes, they're not a money-making operation. So you're looking for somebody that's going to stand up and ask the questions, wait a minute, why are we doing this? Why, and I don't see a lot of that going on. So my qualifications are probably just as good as everybody else's. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but we've had lawyers on there before. What good has that done us sometimes? I've never run for political office. I mean, I spent over 20 years in the military, but honestly, there's a lot of politics that's involved just in that. When general officers say, I need to know about this, and somebody stands up and says, I'm sorry, sir, but that's not the right way to do this.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to, as I've told people, sometimes you just got to pull your pants down and slide on the ice and figure out this is what you want to go do.
We need to pull our pants down and slide on the ice. What does that mean?
Basically, I heard this a long time ago when I was teaching, is that I go back to, and I guess I saw this on MASH one time, about the reality of where sometimes you don't really know what the where are you going to go with this? And sometimes you just have to reach out and kind of just take a leap of faith, whatever the case is, or however you want to call it.
Ah,
And I remember this thing from MASH when the psychiatrist said, sometimes you just have to pull your pants down and slide on the ice. And I would use that even when I taught, and I had people that would go, what the hell does that mean? And I said, well, it means the ice is cold. That's the reality of it. Are you going to get very far? You're not going to know until you venture out there and try and see if this works for you or not. And trying to make a difference, whether you're teaching people, whether you're managing people in your own life, don't be afraid of trying to go out and do something. And right now, what have I got to lose besides a choice of having my voice heard and people going, that's a crazy old guy. What the hell is he doing? Oh, wait a minute. He makes sense. 68 years of life experiences have taught me a lot in traveling all over the world and seeing how different people live and all of these issues. So I really don't get wrapped up when I hear people complaining about this or that. And I'm going, well, I've lived in third world countries for many, many years. And you don't know how lucky you have it here compared to others in the world.
okay. And so, what do you think should be the top priority for the new mayor, whether it's you or somebody else? What is the first thing they should be tackling?
Well, one of the first things is getting this city to start running like a city again and listening to the people they serve. Our roads are shot. Our infrastructure is having severe issues. We're not, as far as I can see, we're really not running this city like it should in accordance with the city charter, in accordance with what the wishes of the people are in many cases. And that should be focus number one. Get that going so that you can start listening and doing the people's work.
Can you give me an example of a little bit about what you mean when you say we're not running a city, like get back to running the city like a city? Can you give me a little bit of an example?
Sure. Well, we've had some major infrastructure issues, as you know, and in many cases, we've let's take power for instance. We are all, for all practical purposes, owner of Austin Water and Austin Energy, and yet there comes a point in time that we've had trees that have fallen down that have been over power lines because people go, oh, you can't cut my trees, these types of issues. There has to be a time where somebody says, no, I'm sorry, this is a right of way. In order to ensure we have power, we're going to have to go up there and trim these trees and do those type of things. Same thing with our roads. And so we're not maintaining those basic functions. How can the city actually operate efficiently for those people that are out there paying taxes, those that use the roads to make a living, those issues for being able to get around and provide those basic services. And if we can't provide those services, how can we be providing the other services that may be needed and spending the taxpayers' money in a more efficient manner? Because we become more unaffordable, and yet we keep adding different things, but we're losing the basic services.
Okay. So now, speaking of affordability, Austin and its housing are not affordable to many, many people. What would you do to change that?
Well, first off, I'm only one vote. So you got to end up with that.
Right.
Let's be realistic about this entire process. One of the things that has been a concern, because even my work through Austin Neighborhoods Council, is that we have concentrated on trying to make things that where there is affordable issues are being met and listened to. Even under Home 1 and Home 2, there were no affordability issues allowed in those two ordinances. They were removed completely. And I was actually against Home 1 and Home 2, and only because, and hear me, I am a property rights advocate. I've spoken at the legislature about property rights. My issue with those two items were that the city was not providing all the information or even listening to the public. They say, oh, this will make things more affordable, when it does not. Nobody nobody knows really what it's going to cost them to build a small ADU in their backyard and all of the hoops and the costs that are associated with that. And so that narrative was not really promoted. We have other big buildings that are going in to where they have the city has said, "Oh, we're going to put affordable units in there, but it'll be 80% MFI." Well, we need to start looking at issues to where we're at 50% MFI, those sort of things versus this higher income level, because all of these places that are being built lately are all for higher income type people.
And to clarify, MFI stands for median family income, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So there needs to be that voice and reason of saying, okay, you can do this or you can do that, but they're not actually telling us the entire truth. So we can't make things affordable if there's no desire at the top to make things affordable.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding your approach. So the first approach because I know you can't solve it.
Right.
So your first approach would be to go back to home and take a look at home and change home. The city council has already voted on this. And so what would be your approach to walk that back?
Well, and it's not an approach to walk it back, but it's to make sure that if there's areas that can be tweaked, let's tweak those.
Okay.
And just for your information, Home 2 has still not been implemented across the city in certain areas. So there are a lot of concerns when it comes to safety, when it comes to fire, when it comes to infrastructure. They've actually got a program set up to where they want to review it after 6 months and then after another time frame to see how it's working and how it's not working. That would be the time to go in there and tweak those things. So I know people are going to go, well, the land use code needed to be updated. Well, that may be true. That may not be true. Depends upon your perspective. So the only way you can tweak things is going back and seeing what's not working, evaluate it, and how can we make it better so that people can understand, okay, yes, I can afford to go put an ADU in my backyard if I meet this criteria, because they did not change the tree ordinance. They did not change the impervious cover ordinances. So did we not limit this? And all of this plays into the big picture of how, I don't know how you say this is that, okay, if I have a heritage oak tree, I can't take it down in my backyard to put in an ADU. But nobody understands all of the ins and outs. And I think it should be explained to the residents that may want to do this, of saying whether or not you could go do this without spending a bunch of money to see whether or not they actually can qualify, or if it's going to fit within their property lines.
In the name of full transparency, we missed a question during our interview. So we emailed Jeffrey afterwards and we asked him this. Let's say I'm someone that moved here a year or two ago and I have no idea who you are. You run into me on the street and you want to get my vote. Please fill in the blank. If you care about blank, then you should vote for Jeffery Bowen. And his answer is accountable and transparent city government for the residents of Austin according to the city charter. That means getting the city back to being run like a city should. Hey y'all, it's Nikki. I have to tell you about Tecovas boots. I finally have a pair, and I don't know if y'all know this, but they're handmade, high quality, stylish, and they were comfortable right out of the box. Now, I know we buy everything online these days, but trust me, go get fitted for some boots at Tecovas. And they will also personalize them with leather stamping. So grab a friend and head on over to the Tecovas flagship on South Congress or their store at the Domain. Plus, good news, Tecovas is opening a brand new store for your Western wear needs just north of Austin on Main Street in Georgetown. So swing by for their grand opening party September 27th through the 29th for live music and freebies for the first 50 of y'all that get there. With 3 locations in town, you have no excuses. So that's tecovas.com, Tecovas.com. Don't go gently, y'all. how would you approach or change, if anything, things in the ongoing power struggle between the state of Texas and Austin? There seems to sometimes be this feeling that it's an us versus Texas kind of thing in Austin.
Well, I think perception is a big issue, and when you have individuals, even on the city council, that go, the state is doing this or the state is doing that, we need to have some type of working relationship. We have our own local representatives up there to be able to deal with this type of things. I spoke at the legislature during the last session when it came to property rights issues and also about local control, because I believe local control needs to have a say-so in how the state may dictate some of the rules that come down. And I spoke to that, and that Austin is different than Houston, San Antonio, whatever the case is. So our local control needs to still be in effect. But if you can't sit down and have an adult conversation without people going, well, you're doing this to us and you're doing this to them, there needs to be a sense of adults in the room sitting down, having a conversation, and really trying to understand that, and not coming out and saying, well, they've done this to us or they're doing this to us, whatever that case may be. I spoke to both at one of the major committees, and there was both R's and D's on that committee, and was trying to appease to both of their logics as to these effects of what they were trying to do and how it was going to affect us here in Austin.
State lawmakers have kind of chipped away at local control session after session.
Yep.
Right? That's just a fact.
Right.
So how would you be effective there?
Well, the main thing is actually sitting down with those different senators or representatives and pleading that case with them. Let's just use this for just an instance. The last time the state legislature, they took away the fee in lieu for parkland. Okay. There was developers that went to the Capitol, developers that were building here in Austin that did not want to set aside land, or they didn't want to pay the fee in lieu, that went and talked to those people to get rid of that. The same developers that are working here in town. So this is, there are lobbyists all over that are trying to work against even the city that they're trying to build in, to keep from having to pay the fees and having to do some of the local ordinances that are there. Thus, that's one of the reasons of saying, okay, we need to discuss this. Now, if this is what you're going to do, then we'll have to find another way to deal with that. It is no different when fighting those issues when it came down to property rights, because the state was trying to implement some rules about the size of lots, in which the developers were also pushing for that. It failed there, which several of us spoke against. But then again, it came back under Home 2 here locally and passed. So it's understanding kind of the territory and who's doing what to whom, because as far as I can see, there are people that are developers that say they want to do this, and they're really not our friends when it comes down to some of the other issues that they're kind of working around the back door to get around.
Personally, do you think that there is a push and pull and a power struggle between the state and the city? Do you think that exists?
I think there's some push and pull only on certain items or certain issues.
Okay.
When it comes to water usages, I think we need to be right up there lobbying to make sure that we're getting more resources for water for the citizens here. If it comes to power, we need to be lobbying for more of those issues when it comes to power. All of those types of issues that affect the populace here.
Okay. So let's say you're elected mayor and you can basically summon anybody you want for like a long lunch. Who is the first person you want to have a long talk with to get the pulse of the city?
Actually, I would actually reach out to a lot of the actual neighborhoods that are being affected by some of this, because they've been left out in many cases. There are lots of different groups out there, but the neighborhoods have a pulse as to what their people in their areas are actually needing. And let's face it, Austin has got just less than 1 million people in it, whether they be renters, whether they be, homeowners, those things. Those individuals there, because what affects the east side versus what affects the southwest side versus in all the different portions, there are different issues, and trying to combine what are the issues that are common to everybody, and start having those discussions to make sure that is some of the focus that's on the entire agenda, and then work on those.
You were one of the plaintiffs in the Code Next lawsuit. And in another lawsuit over the vertical mixed use code changes, and you've also come out against Project Connect. So some say these changes are necessary for Austin to be better, to better handle the crazy, crazy growth that we've seen here. Do you think that any changes need to be made in the city's land use code or public transportation system?
We can start with Project Connect right off the bat. I'm not against transit by any stretch of the imagination. I actually served on the Project Connect Ambassadors Network for the neighborhoods, was part of the process prior to the vote, which was almost 2 years. And as a guy that's done a lot of heavy construction, would sit there and go, guys, where's your budgets? Where's your cost on this? This is getting out of hand. You say you have this much money, but I'm seeing just running back of the napkin math going, we can't do this. I think we should be able to do well, let's face it. I've been in this town 35 years, and transit is not equitable across the board, period. We need to be getting that concentrated on. We can service this city with some type of rapid bus system, which was one of their first proposals before they decided to go off and try to look at light rail. We could do that. The other thing on Project Connect is that what was originally put out to the voters versus what it is now is two totally different things. They say it passed overwhelmingly. Yes, the original 30 miles with the two main lines plus the future lines, that did. But it is nowhere in that resemblance of what it is now. So something needs to be done. We need to be looking at transit on demand. We need to be looking at more of the neighborhood circulators, those type of things. So there is a major portion of this town that is not being heard throughout that entire process. Again, I'm not against Project Connect by any stretch of the imagination. So whoever's telling you that, I'm sorry, they're not paying any attention. When it comes to Code Next, yes, I was a plaintiff in that lawsuit. Why? Because the city of Austin took away my protest rights given to me by the state of Texas. They neglected that. Thus the reason why they, again, I was part of that lawsuit. When it comes to vertical mixed use, the same thing. They took away our protest rights, our right to petitions, all of those issues, which people are going, oh, well, you're just against, providing this. No. We had we had thousands and thousands of protests that the city just tossed aside, didn't even want to take and go from there. They took away our right to protest, which then ended up in court, and they lost. That's when it comes to code changes, the city, in its ultimate wisdom, has been some of its own worst enemy when it comes to code changes, because if they come up with a code change, they're supposed to, whatever the changes are, put it in the code book, but they have never really kept up with the codes as per se, so that people can go, well, this has been superseded by this, or whatever the case is. And I will tell you right now, and I've said this at council, and I've said this at the different forums, I'm the only candidate that has actually had to go fill out a building permit to build a project for somebody, whether it's the 5-page or the 7-page. Nobody else understands what it takes to go through and try to get that permit. The regular citizen does not understand that. So there needs to be changes in that to make this process a lot more streamlined, where it doesn't take you 12 to 16 weeks to get a permit or longer. in order to build something.
So what I'm hearing, and please correct me, instead of you're thinking that we need to come up with something that was closer to the original or one of the versions where there were buses. There was a better busing system, is that correct? Versus a light rail system.
Yeah.
In general terms, the things that are happening, is there anything that you are like, that's gonna work? That's gonna be good for transportation, or is it all bad?
No, it's not all bad. I'm just I look at the delays. Okay, let's just take the small circulator buses that they're doing now. They said we've served over 1 million customers.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, well, if this is working really, really well, why are we not moving faster to implement that? We should be doing those issues right there, getting those type of things to getting more circulators done. I spoke to several different people that were looking at circulators for the southwest side of town. And I told them, I said, well, you need to come look at my neighborhood. They went a totally different way. This last mile issues could be resolved with some on-demand services for those that are elderly that have a hard time getting around.
Okay. If you could bring back any music venue that we've lost over the years, which one would it be and why?
Actually, I think the Armadillo. We used to go there. The food was really good. There's several of them. I mean, Liberty Lunch.
Right.
There's so many different ones that are now gone. So you could put a list together, but once again, it becomes more and more difficult now to go to different venues. In fact, the wife and I were talking about this just the other day that, we started looking at different things and want to go see different concerts before, some of these guys are completely gone, but the service fees have just gotten so crazy that it's okay. We just have to really be selective on what we're looking at. But the smaller venues that are now gone and many of them that are going away, I really, I miss some of those, even some of that I never made it to.
Right.
Because you go, oh, it'll still be there. And next thing you know, it's gone. You're going,
yep, nope, that's not true. It will not still be there.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that you want to add in closing? Just like anything that you want Austinites to know about you and, where you stand that we haven't covered?
Well, there's so much different stuff that's going on out there. These issues are just the tip of the iceberg. But all I can say is that, look, I'm only one vote that comes out. I am more than willing to sit down and listen to anybody. There are many of my cohorts within the neighborhood realm or throughout the city that I've met that we can agree on a lot of things. And there may be just 10% we can't agree on, but we need to concentrate on those things we can agree on and see about how to make things better. These are not D and R issues. These are about our issues within the city for the residents of this city. That it's pretty clear. It's pretty, in my mind, that's just the way I work. It's like, what does that got to do with this? What does that got to do with that? These are residents' issues that impact all of us. And getting people to understand that you voting in Austin impacts you more than the stuff that's sometimes out of the realm. Because you have a say-so. You should have a say-so on some of these things. And also making sure that there's good clarity on the information that's provided. Ballots in the city of Austin, when you read them, you shouldn't have a thought in your mind that said, does yes mean no and no mean yes? They need to be clear and concise. They need to be understandable. And I think we lack a lot of clarity in this town and being able, and that's why people have been all turned off about what's going on locally on a lot of issues is they just can't get a straight word. And if I don't know something, you know what? I'll go try to find out to get you the answer that you need. I learned that a long time ago in the military when I got asked, what about this? I said, well, I don't know that answer, but I'll go see what I can find out on that.
Right.
That's just kind of the way I was raised. So try to be respectful of others and listen because you learn a lot. I used to have to listen to my grandmother a lot as she looked up at me because she was just real short and always shaking her finger at me, telling me, you need to listen to what I'm telling you, boy. And I'm going, yes, ma'am, I will. And but you have to learn from those learn from those lessons of life.
Well, that feels like a very perfect place to end. So thank you so much for being here with me, Jeffrey. I really appreciate you just like having an honest conversation with me and answering our questions.
Yeah, sure. That's not a problem. I don't have a problem. My wife says, or even my father, he never met a stranger. And I guess I inherited part of that also is I'm willing to have a conversation, even if it's just, passing by, say, hey, how are you doing today? Whatever the case is. There's a lot of a lack of just being kind to people, which is something that I was taught at a very young age. Always try to be kind, treat people the way that you want to be treated.
All right.
So that's kind of our motto around here. Thanks.
All right. Bye. That's all for today here on CityCast Austin. You can find links to Jeffrey's campaign site in our show notes. And you'll hear from the other 4 candidates for mayor every Monday from now until early voting starts. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Austin newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye, y'all.